About 50 years ago, my father and I went to the Grosvenor House Antiques Fair in London. Now, the Grosvenor House Fair was the premier antiques fair in the world. And on one of the stands there, we saw this incredible cabinet. And it looked just like tortoiseshell. The colour and grain was just absolutely incredible. And it almost looked like tortoiseshell, even though it was wood. When we looked at the one at the fair, the dealer who had it said, yeah, this is by Exquisite and Worcester, and it's Mulberry, Mulberry, with Kingwood crossbanding and pewter line inlay. But that was then. So just literally a couple of days ago, this cabinet came on show here in Witney in my showrooms. The world has moved on, and we now know that it's not mulberry, it's bur maple or bur ash. It's by Exquisite and Worcester. So what have we got here? It's a wonderful, wonderful cabinet. Let's go back in time to the late 17th or early 18th centuries. High fashion at that time for the people who were wealthy enough to afford it would have been for Oriental goods, Chinese goods, Japanese goods, even Indian goods. That whole part of the world became a source of fashion, and it meant that large numbers of panels of lacquered work were being imported to Britain from the Far East, where they were being cut about and made into pieces of furniture. And that was all fine, but very, very expensive to do with the cost of shipping and then reconstructing these pieces. But the fashion carried on from the late 17th century into the early 18th century. And then in 1688, Stalker and Parker published their treatise on japanning and varnishing. And in there was a specific section on how to make wood look like tortoiseshell. And that's what we have here. This wonderful effect that makes the whole piece look just like tortoiseshell. So here we have this cabinet, which dates from about 1720. Beautifully inlaid, wonderful tortoiseshell feel to it. And it just gets better the more one looks at it. This lovely cavetto cornice here at the top, again crossbandings. These are thought now to be rosewood rather than kingwood. And you can see it's got this gilt brass embellishment of the hinges, but also all the metalware on the base as well. So when we open this, it comes as no surprise, because this would have been a very expensive piece of furniture, to see that it is exquisitely finished on the inside as well as on the outside, retaining all the original little ring pull handles. And you'll see how even these internal drawers that you couldn't see without opening the doors are finished with the same crossbanding and metal line inlay as on the outside. And even on the inside, the cupboard doors, the same inlay. So this is a very complete piece. And all the mouldings are cross-grain mouldings, and it's raised on these rather nice bracket and bun feet. They were only popular for a very few years in about 1720. It's the transition from the bun foot to the bracket foot. And that tells you a lot about this. This was high fashion at that time, the very, very best. But not only is it a cabinet, as you see here, with a chest below, but it's also a secretaire. And even the secretaire drawers, beautifully made, wonderful dovetailing front and back, oak drawer linings, rebaited drawer bottoms, and again the same line inlay in metal all the way around each and every drawer. The only replacement that I can find on this is this velvet here on the writing surface. The hinges and the locks all look original as well. And this drawer is even fitted to take a couple of ink wells, as you can see. And there are some ink stains on there. So, how do we know this was by Coxett and Worcester? Numerous books on early English furniture have been written, and they've shown pieces with the identical construction, the identical inlay, and all of these are either labelled or attributed to Coxett and Worcester. This one has the advantage, though, in this drawer of having the original label for Coxett and Worcester. As I was talking earlier about Stalker and Parker, their treatise, a treatise of Japanning and varnishing being a complete discovery of the arts with the best way of making all sorts of varnish for Japan, wood, prints, plate or pictures, the method of gilding, burnishing and lacquering, etc., etc., counterfeiting tortoiseshell and marble, and so it goes on. By John Stalker, September the 7th, 1688. And in there is a wonderful passage of dyeing and staining wood, etc. To dye or stain woods of any colour for inlaid or flowered work done by the cabinet maker, use the moistest horse dung you can get that has been made the night before. Through a sieve or cloth, squeeze out what moisture you judge sufficient for the purpose. Convey it into several small vessels, fit for the designs in each of these dissolve of roach, alum and gum arabic, the bigness of a nutmeg, and with them mix reds, blues, greens or what colours best please you, suffering them to stand 2 or 3 days, and so on. And then of dyeing and staining wood, etc., with a brush dipped in aqua fortis, that's nitric acid, stand it in front of the fire until it leaves smoking, till it stops smoking. When dry, rush it again, for the aqua fortis will make it very rough, that's the nitric acid. If to these you add a polish and varnish it with seed lac, and then again polish it, you'll find no outlandish would surpass it, for the curled and knotty parts admit of so much variety, being in some places hard, in others soft and open-grained, to which aqua fortis gives a deeper colour than to the harder and more resisting parts. In short, you'll perceive a pleasing variety interwoven beyond what you could imagine or expect. If you put filings or bits of metals as brass, copper and iron into the aqua fortis, such metal will produce a different tincture. The best French pistols are stocked generally with this sort of wood and stained after this manner. That is the recipe that Messrs. Coxett and Worcester used for producing this fantastic tortoiseshell effect. It's been written up in so many of the different journals, including the Furniture History Society Journal for 2003, labelled Furniture from the White Swan Workshop. And it is interesting because we're talking about Coxett and Worcester. It then goes on about Grace Coxett inherited the White Swan Workshop from her late husband, the cabinet maker John Coxett, who died in December 1718, and she also continued his practice of labelling furniture. John Coxett's will stipulated that Grace should go into partnership with his brother-in-law Thomas Worcester, and under their joint management the White Swan Workshop thrived until Grace's death in August 1735. During that time the firm used 3 different labels to mark their output, of which this is probably the earliest version, dating from circa 1719 to 25. There we go. It's lovely to have a piece that is so pure, but also so very well documented. It's been a great pleasure to talk about this piece. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you may subscribe to our YouTube Masterclass channel, and you can get all the further details on this piece on our website at wrharvey.com. Thank you.